My daughter-in-law said she didn't want this useless old woman in her house anymore. That night, I slept on the porch, and the very next morning, a knock on the door changed everything. Hi everyone. Before I begin my story, if you're new here, please make sure to subscribe and click that little bell so you don't miss our next story. And in the comments, tell me where you're from, and if you've ever gone through something that tested your heart. I'd love to read your story too. Now, let me take you back. The sun hadn't even risen when I heard her voice, sharp, cold, and tired. "Evelyn," she said, "we can't keep living like this. Your medicines, your food, your old habits, everything is too much." She didn't call me Mom. Just Evelyn, like a stranger renting a corner of her house. I looked at my son, Daniel, hoping he would speak up, defend me, say anything at all. But he didn't. He just stirred his coffee over and over, eyes lowered, as if hiding inside that cup. My heart sunk. I had raised that man with my own hands. I had walked miles in the snow to find him food when his father died. And now, silence was all he gave me. That night, they cleared the guest room, my room. My blanket, my Bible, the photo of my late husband, all of it packed into a single box. They said it was temporary, but I could see the truth in their eyes. I was no longer part of their home. I was just an obligation they wanted to forget. So, I slept on the porch. The air was cold, and the wooden floor pressed against my bones. I wrapped myself in that old faded blanket, the same one I'd stitched the year Daniel was born, and whispered a prayer. "God, if you're still listening, please don't let me die like this." Morning came slow and grey. The house was quiet, not even the sound of footsteps inside. Then came the knock, soft at first, then firmer. I struggled to my feet, thinking maybe Daniel had changed his mind. But when I opened the door, it wasn't him. It was a boy, no older than 8, with big brown eyes and a shy smile that tried to hold back tears. "Grandma," he said. I blinked, my heart trembling. It was my grandson, Liam. I hadn't seen him in months because his mother said I made him too emotional. But there he was, standing in front of me, holding a tiny paper bag. "Mom said I forgot my lunch," he whispered. "But I came to see you." He hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might break. And in that hug, the cold from the night before melted away. We sat on the porch steps, sharing the peanut butter sandwich he'd brought. He told me about school, his friends, and the dog he wanted but couldn't have. I just listened, smiling through tears. Then he asked softly, "Grandma, why don't you live with us anymore?" I didn't know what to say. How do you explain rejection to a child who only knows love? So, I told him the only truth I could manage. Sometimes, grown-ups forget what love really means. He looked down, quiet for a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny seashell, white and smooth, with a golden edge. "I found this on the beach," he said. "It's for you. So you don't feel alone." I took it and held it against my heart. For the first time in months, I felt something I thought I'd lost forever, hope. When he left, the house felt emptier than ever, but his words stayed with me. Something inside whispered, "Evelyn, your story isn't over yet." So, I made a decision that morning. If my own family didn't want me, I would start again, somehow. I gathered the little money I had saved, coins, mostly. Enough for one bus ticket and maybe a sandwich. I packed my things, kissed the porch goodbye, and walked toward the station. I didn't know where I was going. Only that I couldn't stay where love had died. As the bus rolled through the countryside, I stared out the window and watched the world blur. Golden fields, old barns, lonely trees swaying like they wanted to speak. I thought about my life, all the sacrifices I had made for Daniel. How I'd worked 2 jobs so he could go to college. How I'd sold my wedding ring to buy him his first car. And now, I was a burden. I closed my eyes and whispered, maybe this is how life ends, not with thunder, but with silence. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. Because the next stop on that bus would lead me to the last person who ever truly knew me. And what happened next would shock everyone. The bus rattled down the long, empty road, its windows trembling with the rhythm of my thoughts. Every mile between me and Daniel's house felt like a mile of freedom, and a mile of heartbreak. I kept turning that little seashell over in my hands, the one Liam had given me. I could still hear his voice saying, "So you don't feel alone." The words clung to me like a promise I didn't know how to keep. Outside, the rain began to fall. Not hard, just soft drops tracing crooked paths down the glass. I watched them race each other until the driver called out, "Next stop, Millstone." That name, it felt like a ghost. Millstone. The town where I was born. The town I swore I'd never return to. When I stepped off the bus, the air smelled of wet soil and old wood smoke. The small station hadn't changed much. A single bench, a flickering light, and an old man reading a newspaper he probably couldn't see in that dimness. I stood there for a while, clutching my bag, wondering what I was even doing. I had nowhere to go. No home. No plan. Just memories that hurt to carry. Then, as I turned toward the road, I saw it, the little bakery across from the station. Its paint was chipped, the windows fogged, but through the glass, I saw a face I hadn't seen in 40 years. "Mary," I whispered. She was behind the counter, wiping flour off her apron, her hair now silver but her smile exactly as I remembered, soft, kind, real. My oldest friend. The one who had stood by me when I'd lost my husband. The one who had written letters for years after I'd moved away, letters I never answered because life had swallowed me whole. I pushed open the door. The tiny bell above it chimed, and when she looked up, her eyes widened. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she gasped, "Evelyn, is that really you?" Her voice broke me. I nodded, and the tears I'd been holding since that night on the porch finally came. She rushed around the counter, wrapping me in her arms, and for the first time in a long, long while, I felt what it meant to be seen. She made me sit down, poured me a cup of coffee, and didn't ask a single question until I was ready. That's what real friends do, they let silence speak first. Finally, I told her everything. About Daniel. About his wife. About sleeping on the porch and the bus ride here. When I finished, her hands were shaking. "You don't deserve that," she said. "After all you gave them." I smiled weakly. "Maybe I gave too much," I said. "Maybe I forgot to keep some love for myself." Mary sighed, then reached for something under the counter, an old photo, yellow at the edges. "You remember this?" she asked. It was from the summer of '79, the year I met George, my late husband. There we were, standing by the lake, barefoot and laughing like the world would never change. "He was a good man," she said softly. "Yes," I whispered. "The best." We sat there for hours, 2 old souls surrounded by the smell of bread and coffee. She told me about her kids, one in Chicago, another overseas. None of them visited much either. I realized then how many mothers sit in quiet corners, waiting for the knock that never comes. When the bakery closed for the day, she handed me a small key. "The apartment upstairs," she said. "It's empty. You can stay as long as you need." I wanted to refuse, pride still clinging to my chest, but she gave me that look I remember too well, the one that said, "Don't argue with me when your hands are trembling." So I thanked her, hugged her again, and went upstairs. The apartment was small but warm. A single bed, a wooden chair, and a window overlooking the quiet street below. I set my bag down, unwrapped my blanket, and placed the seashell by the window. The moonlight caught its golden edge, and for a moment, it almost glowed. I sat on the bed, staring at the walls, and whispered, "Thank you, God, for giving me somewhere to start again." But just as I closed my eyes, I heard a knock on the door. Not the soft kind, this one was firm, urgent. My heart jumped. For a second, I thought maybe it was Mary, maybe she'd forgotten something. But when I opened the door, it wasn't her. It was a man, tall and thin, his clothes wet from the rain. He looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. "Evelyn," he said slowly. My breath caught. It had been more than 40 years since I'd heard that voice. "Tom," I whispered. He nodded. Tom Miller, my husband's best friend. The one who had disappeared after the accident that took George's life. The one who, I later learned, had been driving that night. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air heavy with the past. He took off his hat, his hands trembling. I didn't expect to ever see you again," he said. "But there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." My knees went weak. I gripped the doorframe, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Tom, what are you talking about?" He looked down, then met my eyes with a guilt so deep it could drown a soul. "Evelyn, your husband's death wasn't an accident. It was my fault. And there's more, something I've kept from you for decades." The seashell fell from my hand and cracked on the floor. And in that single moment, I realized the pain I thought I'd left behind on that bus had just followed me home. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Tom stood there, rain dripping from his coat, eyes full of regret. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear my own voice when I finally said, "Come in." He stepped inside quietly, like a man entering a church he didn't deserve to pray in. The air between us was thick, 40 years of silence, pain, and unfinished grief pressing down on both of us. I motioned for him to sit, but he didn't. He just stood there, twisting his hands. "Evelyn," he began softly, "that night, the night George died, it wasn't just an accident. I was driving, yes, but I'd been drinking. We were celebrating his promotion, remember? He wanted to go home early, but I insisted we stay for one more drink. I thought I could handle it. I was wrong." My body went cold. Every part of me wanted to scream, to throw him out, to curse his name. But I couldn't move. I just stared at him, my hands shaking. He went on, voice breaking. "When the truck hit us, I survived. George didn't. The police believed the brakes failed, and I let them believe it. I was too much of a coward to face you. I left town the next morning." Tears burned my eyes, but not just from anger, from the weight of finally knowing the truth after so many years. The man I'd mourned, the husband I'd buried, the guilt I'd carried for never saying goodbye, all of it rushed back like a flood that had been waiting behind a dam. Tom dropped to his knees. "I'm so sorry, Evelyn. I've lived every day of my life trying to make peace with what I did. I worked, I prayed, I stayed sober for 40 years. But peace never came. So I came here to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but I couldn't die without saying it to your face. The room went silent except for the ticking of the small wall clock. I could feel the years inside me, all the loneliness, the loss, the betrayal from my own family, meeting this new pain head on. My voice trembled as I said, "You took everything from me, Tom. My husband. My peace. My life." He nodded, eyes wet. "I know. And I'll carry that until I take my last breath." I turned away, tears falling freely now. For years, I'd prayed for closure, for some sign that George hadn't left me on purpose, that maybe fate had just been cruel. Now I had that answer, but it came wrapped in heartbreak. Yet, somewhere deep down, something inside me softened. I thought about how broken I'd become, how bitterness had stolen decades from me. Slowly, I said, "Tom, I can't forget what you did. But I can't keep hating you either. It's too heavy." He looked up, surprised. "I forgive you," I whispered. "Not for you, but for me. I need to be free of it." Tom broke down completely. His sobs filled the room, raw and human. I placed my trembling hand on his shoulder, not to comfort him, but to release myself from the chains of the past. That night, he left quietly, and I never saw him again. But when the door closed, I felt a strange peace settle inside me. The kind of peace that comes only when you finally stop fighting ghosts. The days that followed were quiet. I helped Mary at the bakery, kneading dough, serving coffee, laughing again. The mornings didn't feel so empty anymore. And sometimes, when the sunlight hit the window just right, I could almost hear George's laughter in the wind. Then one afternoon, as I was wiping the counter, the little bell above the door chimed, and there he was. Daniel. My son. He looked older, tired, ashamed. I froze, my heart twisting between anger and love. "Mom," he said softly. "I've been looking for you." I stayed silent. He stepped closer, eyes red. "Liam told me what happened. He said you slept on the porch that night." I didn't know. I swear I didn't know she'd done that. His voice broke. "I'm sorry, Mom. I was weak. I thought keeping peace in my house mattered more than standing up for you. But I was wrong." I looked at him, the boy I had raised, the man who had once been my pride, then my pain. He knelt in front of me, just like Tom had days before. "Please forgive me," he whispered. I reached out and touched his face, tears spilling freely now. "Daniel," I said softly, "I already did. The night I left, I forgive you. Because one day, I knew you'd remember who you are." He broke down, and I held him just like I did when he was little. And in that moment, every ache, every sleepless night, every tear finally had meaning. That evening, we walked to the park together. Liam ran ahead of us, laughing, chasing fireflies. Daniel told me he'd left his job and sold their house. "We are moving here, Mom," he said. "I want you close. I want to make it right." I smiled, watching my grandson dance in the grass. "You already have," I said. When we got home, I placed that little broken seashell on the table. Its golden edge caught the last light of the sunset. It wasn't perfect anymore, a small crack ran through its middle, but it was still beautiful. Maybe that's what life really is. Not about keeping things whole, but learning to love what's left when they break. I looked out the window, whispering a quiet prayer. Thank you, God, for giving me one more morning to feel loved. Because after all the years of pain and silence, I finally understood something. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, it redeems it. And in that redemption, I found my peace.